One day you look in the mirror and something feels different. Not just the gray hairs or the wrinkles. It's that nagging thought in the back of your mind. Am I getting old? You think back to your last doctor's visit. The lab results weren't great. Blood sugar keeps creeping up. Cholesterol's getting worse. And the doctor said, it's not that bad. It happens to most people your age. We don't need to put you on any medication yet. But that phrase stuck with you. Most people your age? What age is that? When the aches start showing up? When fatigue lingers? When the brain fog sets in? It's not that it's terrible, just not like it used to be. Maybe it's time to start changing some things while there is still time. Hello, health champions. Today we're going to talk about the top 10 foods to eat after you've reached the age of 50. Most people, as they grow up, feel pretty much invincible. And then up to age 30, it's pretty much a free ride. But after 50, things really change. It's sort of like this. If we think about your vitality and we plot that as 100%, and we plot your age here, and we got 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, then as you develop, as you are in your youth and in your teens, your body develops without you having to do anything. So at about age 25, you reach your peak. And then it's pretty much plateaus for a few years, but after the age of 30, it starts going back down again, so that at age 50, you are on the way down, so to speak. And this is where you start noticing some of the earliest signs of aging. And our goal is not to try to never age, because we don't know how to do that yet. But what we do know is if we make some lifestyle changes, if we do the right things from an early age, now we can get this peak a little bit higher, and then we can start going down. We can degenerate much, much slower, so that the time where you start having symptoms is much, much later in life. But after age 50, some things change that you may not even notice. Most people are going to start losing muscle mass unless they're very physically active. You're going to start losing collagen and elastin, and these are the components of bone and cartilage and skin. And when you start losing those, now you become stiffer. And also what happens that people didn't necessarily think about before is you become more insulin resistant. So even if you haven't started gaining weight or become diabetic, for most people, they're heading in that direction, even if they haven't really changed much of what they eat. They could eat certain things when they were 30, but it doesn't mean that you can necessarily eat those things anymore. And for most people, you're also starting to get more oxidative stress and inflammation that shows up in the form of a low-grade chronic inflammation that starts driving degenerative disease and premature aging. So when we talk about the best foods, it needs to be foods that support all these factors and can start building your body and reversing or slowing that degeneration. And food number one is salmon and or sardines. And it could also be some other fatty fish, but do your research and make sure that it is high in the essential fatty acids, the omega-3s, EPA, and DHA, because fatty fish is the richest natural source of these things. And there's many benefits to this, especially as you age. It has the ability to reduce or normalize your inflammatory response. It supports brain and artery health. Part of that is because it reduces inflammation. Part of it is that most of your brain is actually built out of DHA. And DHA is directly linked to the rate of brain shrinkage, meaning if you have high levels of DHA as opposed to not enough, then your brain is going to shrink and degenerate less. And also having enough DHA has been shown to improve memory and reduce the neurological decline compared to people who have less of this DHA. But the scary thing is, because most people don't eat fish and because we eat a lot of processed foods, most people are deficient in these omega-3s. And fish or fish oil, therefore, is not really optional. If you don't eat fish, if you don't eat fatty fish, probably 3 times a week or more, then you really need to be taking a fish oil supplement. Food number 2 is avocados, and they are very rich in potassium and monounsaturated fatty acids, which helps the heart because it helps improve vascular elasticity. So if the blood vessels are elastic, then it's easier for the heart. It doesn't have to work as hard to pump the blood through the blood vessels, and that makes it also easier to maintain normal blood pressure. Avocados are also very high in fiber and very low in net carbs, and this is a very important factor for insulin resistance as you become less carbohydrate tolerant, and it helps you stabilize insulin with less influence responses, and it helps maintain your blood glucose. It also helps with the absorption of vitamin A, D, E, and K, all the fat-soluble vitamins, as well as the carotenoids like beta-carotene, which is pre-vitamin A that your body can convert into vitamin A. Number 3 is cruciferous vegetables, and these are things like broccoli, Brussels sprouts, kale, cauliflower, cabbage, and arugula. And there are many more than this, so if you want to go do a search to get more variety in, then that'd be a great idea. They help enhance liver detox. So they contain compounds that enhance the liver's ability to assist the liver in doing its detox. And one of the things the liver does in that regard is to improve estrogen metabolism. So all hormones like estrogen and testosterone and all the other hormones, they have a certain half-life. They are only supposed to be active for so long, and then the liver breaks them down. That is how we can balance out hormones. And if we have enough of these compounds that are contained in cruciferous vegetables, now the liver can do that better, and that becomes very important during menopause for women and for prostate health for men. They also contain very high levels of antioxidants that help the body control inflammation and oxidative stress. Food number 4 is pastured eggs, not pasteurized eggs, but pastured, meaning the hens that lay them are living their life on pastures. And if they do that, then they contain high levels of choline, lutein, and zeaxanthin, which are very important for memory and nerve signaling, and also for eye health to protect your vision as you age. And they also support the production of acetylcholine, which is a neurotransmitter that is super important for learning and memory. And they're also very rich in DHA, not as abundant as the fish we talked about first, but it is they have enough that it's an important source of DHA for the brain. And also very important for the brain as you age is cholesterol. If you have very low levels of cholesterol, that dramatically increases your risk of dementia. And these pastured eggs also contain the fat-soluble vitamins A, D, E, and K. But it is important that we eat the whole egg, not just the egg white, and it is important that we get a good quality egg. And why is that? Because most of the nutrients that we talked about, they are in the yolk, and if we want to utilize the protein to build body building blocks, to build tissue, then we need the combination of protein, of amino acids from the yolk and the white combined. That is the only way that we can utilize a significant amount of those amino acids. And if we compare the really good quality eggs, the pastured eggs, where the hens walk outside and they get sunshine and fresh air and they get some exercise and they eat some bugs and some worms and some grass and some seeds, that's a very healthy hen. as opposed to the CAFO chicken, the concentrated animal feeding operation, where the hens are treated atrociously. They never see daylight. They're just fed hormones and whatever it takes to make them grow fast. They're miserable. Then if we compare the nutrients, that shows up in the eggs as well. So these essential fats that we talked about, the EPA and the DHA, you get 2 to 3 times more in the pastured eggs. Vitamin D, you get 3 to 6 times more in the pastured eggs. Vitamin E, you get twice as much. Beta carotene, that we can turn into vitamin A, has 7 times as much. And this is what gives the egg yolk their color. So some manufacturers in the CAFO operations or in the less natural, the less caring operations, they might feed the hens some beta carotene to try to make the yolks look healthier. And you probably get better looking yolk and you get some more beta carotene, but it's a trick. It's not going to affect the other nutrients. And then when we look at the lutein and the zeaxanthin, which is important for eye health, we have twice as much in the pastured eggs. So if you can afford it at all, then I would strongly suggest that you get the pasture. You either invest in health or you pay for disease. Number 5 is bone broth. And bone broth is very rich in glycine, collagen, and proline. And these are compounds that we boil out of the bones so that your body can put them back into bones. So it supports the connective tissue, which again is skins and joints and tendons and cartilage and so forth. And therefore, to support our joints and our gut lining and our skin, bone broth is a great choice. And to support the joints, we need to reduce overall inflammation and then provide the proper building materials to put the joints back together and repair them properly. And this can help reduce inflammation and reduce osteoarthritis, which is part of an unhealthy aging process that makes you stiff. And you can also, in severe cases or as it progresses, you can get the swollen joints on your hands as well. Not as deformed as with the rheumatoid arthritis, but still kind of thick and clumsy and stiff joints. And the amino acid glycine has also been shown to improve sleep for some people. Food number 6 is berries that are very rich in 2 compounds called polyphenols and anthocyanins. And these compounds help reduce oxidative stress and inflammation. And in doing that, they help slow down brain damage and cognitive decline. They help improve signaling and memory formation in aging adults. They reduce specifically oxidation in the brain area and damage in the brain. And they can also help improve circulation, which is super important as you age. But while berries are sort of your safe, sweet treat, you still don't want to overdo them, and you do want to know a little bit about which ones are safer in terms of sugar. So we're just going to talk quickly about glycemic control. And once you get over 50, what happens is your metabolism slows down and your insulin sensitivity goes down, meaning your carbohydrate tolerance goes down. So you can't eat as much of them as you did when you were 30, even if you maintain or increase exercise. So you want to shift yourself around to a low carb and low glycemic diet. Now these go hand in hand for the most part, but we do want to understand a little bit about glycemic index. So it's a measure of how quickly you eat something and then it becomes blood sugar. So if that happens very fast, it's a high glycemic index. If it happens very slowly, it's a low glycemic index. And pure glucose has the reference number of 100. So traditionally, a low glycemic index is between 0 and 55. And a moderate is between 56 and 69, and a high glycemic index is 70 and above. But this scale was created not for people over 50 who are becoming insulin resistant, and it's also developed in a society where they believe that carbohydrate and starch is the foundation. They believe in the food pyramid, and they believe you should have 8 to 10 servings of grain and starch every day. Now, all of that is not true, and this is why we have an epidemic of obesity and diabetes all around the world. So I'm going to give you my numbers. These are the official numbers. I think, especially as you age, your green numbers, your low glycemic index is 0 to 25. You have no business eating anything that's as high as 55, or maybe as an exception here and there. Moderate is 25 to 40, and high is anything above 40. And this is if, again, you want to age gracefully, you want to maintain your health and your brain health and remain insulin sensitive. So let's talk about some of the foods that I'm recommending in this video. First of all, meat, fish, and eggs have a glycemic index of 0 because they have no carbs, so they basically don't raise blood sugar. They can raise it a little bit if you eat a lot of it, if you overeat, because the protein, excess protein, can be turned into glucose. So the 0 isn't strictly true, but just know that it's very, very low. And next is non-starchy vegetables. And even though the primary constituent is carbohydrate, it's mostly fiber and water. So the glycemic index is also very, very low, between 10 and 20. Nuts and seeds are also low. They're between 10 and 35, and we'll look at some examples there. And then berries have quite the range, anywhere from 25 to 50, and we'll look at some details. Among the berries, the blackberries and raspberries are the safest because they're low carbs, but out of those carbs, there's a lot of fiber that slows everything way down. So the glycemic index is only 25. Next is raspberries, which have a lot less fiber, but still pretty much the same sugar. So the glycemic index jumps up to 40. They're still pretty safe, but you don't want to just go crazy on strawberries. Same thing with blueberries. They have a little more carbs and sugar, but not as much fiber as the blackberries and raspberries. So the glycemic index there is 50. So these colors pretty much indicate how you want to think about them. Now, the red doesn't mean you have to avoid blueberries entirely. Unless you're a diabetic and you're really trying to make a change, then you would probably want to keep blueberries out. But blackberries, raspberries are going to be a whole lot safer, and strawberries are going to fall somewhere in between there. Out of the nuts and seeds, the safest are going to be chia seeds at 1, because it's pretty much only protein, fat, and fiber. So there's nothing there really to trigger a glycemic response. And flax, hemp, and pumpkin, extremely low at 10 also. We have macadamia nuts, pecans, and almonds among the nuts, also at 10. And then at 15, we have walnuts, pistachio nuts, and hazelnuts. And then at the bottom of the list for seeds, we have sunflower seeds and sesame seeds at 35. So that's still relatively low. It's not like you have to avoid them, but also realize that they're high in omega-6 fatty acids, so they're not going to help you in terms of that omega-6, omega-3 ratio. And even though they're kind of low, just realize that there are others that are much, much better. Let's talk about some of the benefits of nuts and seeds. Among the nuts, we have Brazil nuts, walnuts, pecans, and macadamia. And among the seeds, we have chia, flax, and pumpkin seeds that are easy to buy, easy to get. They're inexpensive, and they are some of the best in terms of glycemic index, healthy fats, and benefits. So one of the benefits, and this is of the Brazil nut especially, which we're going to give you a little story on, they have selenium, which is necessary for the production of glutathione peroxidase, and that's the enzyme that helps the body make glutathione. And between the rest of them, they are high in fiber, they're high in protein, and in healthy fats. You can also get a lot of minerals like magnesium, zinc, calcium, and iron from these nuts and seeds. Also some vitamins B and E. And you can also get some omega-3s in the form of alpha-linolenic acid. And this is going to be pretty much only in the chia seeds and the flax seeds. There's some in hemp seed as well, which is not on the list, but that's another good one. And the ALA can be converted to the necessary forms, to the missing forms, EPA and DHA, but the conversion is so poor that you don't want to count on ALA as a source of EPA and DHA. However, the omega-3s in nuts and seeds, they help shift that omega-3, omega-6 ratio, because if you eat enough of these, that's going to help favor out that ratio. So I want to tell you some super important things about Brazil nuts and a very interesting story, because for years I would muscle test patients in the clinic, and I would have them hold or taste something and figure out through muscle testing if their body liked it or if it hurt them. And nothing showed up as much as Brazil nuts, pretty much. I would say more than 90% of people tested sensitive. Their body said that Brazil nuts are not good for me. And I didn't understand why back then, but I pretty much told people to avoid Brazil nuts. And then what I've learned since then is that they are not just a rich source, they are an extremely rich source of selenium, like ridiculously rich. They contain about 45 times more selenium than the next closest source, which is chia and sunflower seeds. But now, get this. Here are some numbers we really need to understand. You don't have to memorize them, but you need to understand the magnitude of these. The recommended daily allowance is only 55 micrograms. That's millionths of a gram, a tiny, tiny amount. However, there is a toxicity level of 400 micrograms. So only about 7 times above the daily allowance already makes you toxic. And now, get this, one nut is 90 to 180 micrograms. So you don't have to memorize this. You just need to understand the scope of it, the magnitude. So one nut can get you 160 to 320%, 1.5 to 3 times the recommended daily allowance. So basically, 3 nuts would already put you above the level of toxicity. And this is why so many people came into the clinic and they muscle tested as sensitive to Brazil nuts, because already a handful is going to put you above the level of toxicity. So the moral of the story is that you need to understand that there is a toxicity level, and you can safely have 1 to 2 per day, or if you don't have them every day, maybe you can have a handful, but realize the toxicity level, and 1 to 2 is enough. Food number 8 is dark chocolate. And I can hear you right now. You're secretly, silently cheering and saying, yes, I knew it. And they're high in flavonols, and they help the endothelial function and the release of nitric oxide. And both of these are good things for your vascular system. So endothelial function means the properties of the blood vessel, how elastic it is, how well the muscles and the signaling works to distend, to dilate and contract the blood vessel. So the elasticity of the blood vessel. So you can control blood pressure and circulation better. And nitric oxide is a substance your body releases that causes vasodilation, that helps with circulation. So both of these factors can help improve the blood flow to the brain and the extremities. And that's a very good thing, especially to the brain as you age, to help maintain that brain function. And you can thereby support your cognitive function without the burden of sugar if the chocolate dark enough. So let's talk about what that means. Because we said as you age, you tolerate carbs less. So let's look at the total carbs. Let's look at fiber, net carbs, because total carbs is not what is absorbed in your bloodstream. The fiber is not digested and the fiber slows down the uptake. So we subtract the fiber from the total carbs to get the net carbs. And then what we really also want to know is how much added sugar is there, because the added sugar is 50% fructose, which is going to work toward creating a fatty liver. So let's start with milk chocolate. And that has a total of 26 grams of total carbs, only 1 gram of fiber. Therefore, we subtract the 1 from the 26, we get 25 grams of net carbs that can become blood glucose. And out of that, 15 grams is added sugar, which means fructose. So the difference here is going to be mostly lactose because we add milk. And then we have the first real dark chocolate, which is 50% cocoa or chocolate mass in that chocolate. So you can't really tell the difference in appearance between 50 and 100 because they all look very dark. But it has 18 grams of total carb, 3 grams of fiber, 15 grams of net carbs, and 11 grams of added sugar, which contributes that fructose. But the difference here between 15 and 11 is that there are some naturally occurring carbohydrates in chocolate. So they're not going to be as bad as the added sugar, and there's not a whole lot of them, and they're sort of slowly absorbed. Then we get to 70% cocoa in the chocolate, and now we're at 13 grams of total carbs, 4 grams of fiber, 9 grams of net carbs, and 7 grams of added sugar. Now, the way we want to understand these numbers between 50 and 70 and 85 and so forth, that once it gets dark and we don't have any milk added, then whatever isn't chocolate is basically added sugar, more or less. It doesn't quite hold up, but that's the rough rule of thumb. So once we get to 85, now it has 10 grams of total carbs, 5 grams of fiber, 5 grams of net carbs, and 4 grams of added sugar. And if you notice the color change here over on the added sugar, I think that 4 grams in an ounce is fairly safe. And what happens when we get to the darker chocolates is that all the fat is basically in the cocoa, in the chocolate mass, in the cocoa butter. And therefore, as the percentage goes up, the fat percentage goes up, and that also helps slow down the absorption of the sugar. Plus, they get very, very filling and satisfying. Whereas 1 ounce of 85% chocolate is quite satisfying. With milk chocolate, it's very, very addictive. With 90% chocolate, we get 8 total carbs, we get 6 grams of fiber, 2 grams of net carbs, and 2 grams of added sugar. Now, these numbers, if you're super analytical, they don't make perfect sense because the steps aren't exactly smooth, but that's because of rounding errors. So we're just trying to keep it simple here. With 100% chocolate, like a baking chocolate or something, then you get 7 grams of total carbs, you get 6 grams of fiber, 1 gram of net carbs, and 0 added sugar. So the 85 and above are the safe ones. A lot of people are not going to enjoy the 100%, but the more you get away from sugar in your foods, the better you're going to like the higher percentages. Food number 9 is fermented vegetables. And these are things like kimchi and sauerkraut. Those are the most common ones. But any vegetable that you can ferment is going to produce very much the same effect. So if you're interested in doing that yourself, you can look up recipes and ways to do it. There are millions of them on Google. And the reason you want these fermented foods is that when you ferment them, they grow bacteria. And these bacteria are very friendly to your gut, to your microbiome, and they help restore your microbiome and your microbial diversity, which is very important for health. Because with aging, this microbial diversity decreases dramatically, both with age and with antibiotic exposure. And when our guts work better, now we can notice an improved digestion, improved immunity, and improved nutrient absorption. Because what the gut bacteria do is they basically digest and repackage and prepackage a lot of the nutrients for us. And your gut is super important for the production of neurotransmitters. Most of the neurotransmitters are actually produced there, and this is especially when it comes to serotonin. And a healthy gut also improves the bioavailability, the absorption and bioavailability of magnesium and zinc. Food number 10 to eat as you age is grass-fed liver. And if you can't stand the taste of liver, then you can buy it as a supplement, as desiccated liver, which just means dried liver. And they either just press it into little tablets. If that still has too much liver flavor for you, then you can buy it in a capsule so you don't taste it at all. And the reason that we want to consider liver as an important food is that it's very rich in certain nutrients, but also these nutrients are highly bioavailable. And this is iron, B12, folate, which is vitamin B9, and also vitamin A. And we want to understand that these are very common deficiencies in the population, but especially over age 50. And these nutrients, they support methylation and detox in the liver. They support also the production of red blood cells. So we can't have totally healthy and mature red blood cells without enough of these nutrients, especially the B vitamins. And the reason red blood cells are important, obviously, is to distribute oxygen throughout the body. And as we age and our circulation might suffer, that becomes more important than ever. And the nutrients that we talked about in the liver also support your mitochondria and your overall energy production. So all the foods that we've talked about, you want to think about them not just as foods, but as powerful resources that if you eat a wide variety and you get good quality foods, now they can address all the systems in your body that tend to break down as you age and you go to 50 years and beyond. And also understand that it's worth learning to cook. There are so many resources online, so many recipes that you really have no excuses. Just learn one new dish per week. If you buy real quality and you know how to cook it, then it's not going to be boring food. On the contrary, it's going to be the most exciting, the tastiest, and the most satisfying food that you've ever had. If you enjoyed this video, you're going to love that one. And if you truly want to master health by understanding how the body really works, make sure you subscribe, hit that bell, and turn on all the notifications so you never miss a life-saving video.